Hello everyone. Welcome to today's section. So we'll be starting in 1 minute. I'm Amina Melody, and I'm very excited to have welcome you all to today's live stream. We have our mentor on the call already, Emmanuel Eze. So we'll be starting right away, but before I invite the mentor to come on board, please introduce yourself and where you are joining us from. Once again, I'm Amina Merdia and I'm joining from Lagos, Nigeria. Thank you all for joining today's session. All right, Emmanuel, can you hear me? Good evening. Hello. Hello, Emmanuel. Hi, welcome.
Hi, good evening.
Good evening. So I think we're ready to have you put us through today's lecture.
Okay, so just give me a minute. I am trying to just pull up my slide and just give me a minute.
Okay, no problem. So welcome again welcome again everybody. Rahimat, welcome Ola Dimiji. Please pardon my pronunciation, everyone. Welcome Mr. Welcome Benja. So please, while we wait for Emmanuel to set up his slide, please introduce yourself and where you're joining us from. On the chat, please, on the chat, please. We're very excited to welcome you all once again. So thank you for joining today's section.
Sorry, everything's not for that side. I'll do the same.
Hi, Emmanuel. So are you ready?
Oh, yes. Sorry, I was just finding it a bit difficult to get myself unmuted. Yeah, so I think I'm all set, and just let me know once I can comment, yeah?
Oh, you can go ahead already.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
All right then. Let me I think I had a bit of a network glitch, but then can you confirm you can hear me and you can see my screen?
Yes, I can hear you very clearly.
Oh, great. All right, thanks. And okay, so for today's session, I'd want to say a big thank you to everyone who made it out to the last session, and also those of us that are here today. For today's session, it's going to be more hands-on, right? Basically, what we're going to be looking at, just a moment, I'm just trying to confirm that my slides are visible. I don't think it's changing on. Okay, just a moment. Oh, great. So what we're going to be doing today basically is going to span across these three areas, right? Importing data with Power BI. Yes, please.
Yeah, so I don't know if it's just me. Can others confirm if they can see Emmanuel's screen? I can't from my end.
Okay, what's happening? Just a moment. I am trying to take a look at Zoom. So let me try resharing, right? I'm going to try resharing my screen now. Okay, so can you please confirm if you can see my screen now?
Yes, I can see your screen now.
Aha, all right. So I was saying what we're going to be looking at for today is to span across these three areas, right? Importing data with Power BI, exploring data with Power BI, building reports with Power BI, right? But then again, like I said, it's going to span across this area. So what that means is that we're going to be touching on several things, across these three areas. When I say several things, it's going to look like, touching around data types, adding rows and columns, filling data, splitting columns, transposing data, appending data, adding custom columns, filtering. We're going to look at how to hide fields, disable fields, look at query dependencies, and just also a brief view of what M queries look like. M queries are queries that are used in Power BI. We're going to look at see what they look like. We're also going to create relationships between our tables or our data sources. We're also going to address blank data, see how to deal with some areas where we have blank data. Look at a couple of visuals, look at how to sort, how to create reports that looks at maybe your top 5 performers or least 5 performers, things like that. We're also going to touch on hierarchy a bit, and also look at cross-filtering, drilling, interaction between reports. Also, we're going to look at trends over time, and possibly look at what we call date dimension tables, or date dimension table rather, right? So, and like I said, I'm going to just jump right into Power BI, and we're going to start looking at some of these things that we just spoke about. So just a moment while I pull up Power BI. Okay, just give me a moment. Oh. Just a moment, just a moment. Right. So, and while my Power BI is coming up, so I hope we've been able to download Power BI, install, and perhaps try our hands on a couple of few things like we saw the previous week. I hope at least we've been able to do some of that. But then we're also going to maybe look at some of the things that we may have touched last week, just a little bit of refresher while we try to carry out today's tasks. So I have my Power BI on the screen. Just give me a moment to adjust this accordingly. Okay. So just a moment, I'm not sure why Power BI is running away kind of. Oh, great, here you are. Just trying to align this properly. Okay, so just for a bit of refresher, I'm going to go ahead and delete some of these data sources we imported last time, right? That would just give us an idea, just a refresher on how we imported some of these data sets into Power BI. Just a minute, I should delete all of this. Okay, yeah, so I'll just go ahead and delete this views, and this is just going to be like we're starting over again. So we did look at how to import data into Power BI. So I'm just going to quickly import some of the data sets I'm going to be making use of for building my report today. So I'll go to get data just at the top corner, and I want to first bring in a data set from Excel. So just a single Excel sheet. I'm going to bring in data. So once I click on get data and I select the type of data I want to import, it's going to ask me where that data is located, on my PC. So I'll just navigate to where I have the data I want to import, and just a moment. Oh, great. So this, I'm going to import this particular data. This particular data has a couple of sheets in it. So I have the product table, I have the geography table, I have the manufacturer table. Well, I don't need this product table. I'll just take the product table. I won't take product, right? So I just ticked the boxes for the data that I need. And of course, you can have a view on the right-hand side to see what the data that you're trying to import, looks like. Power BI gives you, a view of what the data looks like before you get to import it, right? So for this, I'm just going to say transform data, because I want to, looking at the data, I know it needs some bit of housekeeping, right? So I'm going to say transform data. Now, once I do that, Power BI opens what we call Power Query, right? I think we spoke about this last week when we discussed the components of Power BI, right? So this is what it looks like. The three different data sets that I wanted to bring in, right? So you can see I have my product table, I have the geography table, I have my manufacturers table, right? So now I'm going to be touching on some of these things that we need to do in order to prepare our data before we use it for reporting, right? So for the product table, looking at this table, I think I need to, for my price column, perhaps I need to split this so that the currency code is going to be on a separate column and the actual price for this product is going to be on a separate column, right? So basically what I'm trying to say is that I want to be able to split this data. Also for the products, for this column called products, I want, if you look at this closely, you would see that I have product name, and I also have what I would want to refer to as my segment, right? The product segment. So I'm going to quickly split these columns using some of the functionalities in Power BI. So up top here, you can see a function called split column, right? And if you look at this product column that I want to split, you would see that what separates the two entities I want to split is a pipe, right? So for some data, you could see a comma separating, you could see different symbols separating, but in this case, a pipe separates this. So what I would want to do is to say split column by a delimiter. So that pipe is a delimiter. So I'll just quickly say I want to split by a delimiter. Now, Power BI asked me, okay, so what is the delimiter that you want to make use of? So you can see here, there's a dash here. I'm going to take out that dash and put my pipe sign, right? So once I do this and I say, okay, now you can see I now have two columns. The product column, which has the name of the product, and the other one called product 2, which is basically my segment. So I can go ahead to quickly rename these columns, but before I rename them, so let me just go ahead and quickly rename them. So for me to rename this, I can just double click on the column headers and then just rename this. So I can call this one product, and then for this other one, I can call this my segment. I can call this my segment. So that's fine. Now, I want to also split this other column, but you can see that what it has in common across all records is USSD. And then the price differs from item to item. So I can use a functionality in Power BI that looks at how to create a column for an example column. So for instance, if I go to add column on my menu bar, if you look at the options we have here, I have one option that says column from examples, right? So I'm going to click on this, and then it's going to ask me if I want to do this from all columns or from selection. I'll select from all columns, right? So once I select this, now this is one very interesting thing. I want to split this price, this original price column into currency and maybe some other column that holds the actual value, right? So what I'm going to do here is to say, so for the column header, let me just rename this. I'll double click and rename this to currency. And then for the rows themselves, I would come to the first row and I'll just type USD. So it says that I am trying to perhaps type something that is already existing in one of the columns in my data, right? So once I type USD and just say enter, you can see it now takes that USD for every row across this particular record. For every row, it gives me the currency. Now let's see if this would also work for the actual price itself. So I'm going to try to do that again. I'm going to try to add column. Just a moment. This is just, okay, yes. I'm going to add column and then from example, column from example for all columns. And then this time around, I'm going to call this, so maybe let me just call this price 2. I'll rename that afterwards. But then for the entries themselves, you can see the very first price here is USD 412.13. So I'm going to try to type in just 412.13. Now you see Power BI is intuitive enough to know that I am trying to call something from a different column. So once I press enter, you can see all the entries. They correspond to the actual prices, from this price column, right? So I can say, okay. So what this means now is that for some of these columns that I had already derived a value out of, perhaps I don't need them anymore. For instance, the price column, I don't need this anymore. So I can go ahead and perhaps go to my home option. You can see the option to remove columns, right? So I can go ahead and remove this column because I don't need it anymore. So now this particular price, I can go ahead and rename this from price to just to price, right? And then the data type, I did say we're going to look at data type because it's also important that you are aware of the data type that you're using for the fields that you're dealing with, right? So for this price, I'm going to change the data type by clicking on, you see this icon, this part of the data where you have ABC. That's what tells you the data type that you're dealing with. So I'm going to click on this, and then I'm going to change this to fixed decimal number, right? So I think I'm fine with this. I'm also fine with currency. And then I think I'm also fine with my segment and product. So I think this is fine for this particular data. The only thing I need to do now is just to rename this data itself, the table itself. You can see the name of this table is called product_table. I just want to call it product. So, and the essence of doing this is because sometimes you may want to use some of the additional functionalities of Power BI. For instance, the Q&A functionality where you can just type a question and Power BI looks at your data, uses your data to answer that question. So I'll go ahead and just on the right-hand side where I have query settings under properties, I'll just go ahead and instead of product table, I'm going to just leave it at product, right? And as you can see on the right-hand side, every single step that you perform on your table or on your data, you're going to see all of those single steps, all of those various steps. You're going to see all of them here, so you can undo any one that you wish to undo. But then this is all I want to do for my product data. I'll go to my geography data now. So for my geography data, if you look closely, you'd see that row 1 for this data holds something that is not entirely what we want to be our column headers. Row 2 also the same thing. Now, if you look at row 3, you'd see that this is our actual column headers, right? So I can go ahead and delete rows 1 and 2 and then use row 3 for my column headers. How do we get to do this? At the top, you will see remove rows, right? So I can go ahead and expand this, remove top rows. So once I click this, how many rows do I want to remove from the top? Just 2 rows. So I'm typing 2 here and I'm saying, okay. It removes all 2 rows. And then I can now use this first row as my header, right? So if I look up here, you'd see an option that says use first row as headers. So I'm going to click on this and then it uses that row as headers. Now, another thing that we should be mindful of when we're dealing with location data, right? We should also be mindful of things like zip code, postal codes, right? They're written as numbers, but not in all cases are they always numbers, right? So the best thing would be to change the data type to a text data type. So I'll go ahead and click on the data type icon and then just change this to text. instead. That way, I don't get to lose data. I don't get to lose, have the postal code misrepresented. So I think I'm also fine with my geography data. So the only thing I'd want to do now is to rename the table name as geography. So I'll just go ahead and rename this on the right-hand side where I have properties. You can see the name of the table. I can say geography. So this is fine. I think this data set is ready for me to make use of. Now I'll go to manufacturers. So for manufacturers, you'd see that sometimes we'll get to experience some tables that may not be represented the way we want them to. So there might sometimes be the need for us to transpose these tables, right? So for this particular data, you can see that I have a couple of information, and on the rows are the manufacturers. The first row is the IDs of the manufacturers. The second row is the names of the manufacturers. The third row is the some logo information of the manufacturers. I don't need rows 4, 5, and 6, right? So I can take them out. So firstly, let me just remove the bottom rows, the three bottom rows. So I'm going to take those out. That's rows 4, 5, and 6. And then I'm going to transpose this table. Now, how do I transpose? If I go to transform, you can see on the menu bar, I have home, I have transform. If I go to transform, you'd see transpose option under tables. I can see my transpose option, just like we do in Excel. When we transpose data in Excel, I'll just go ahead and transpose this particular data, right? And after transposing this, you can see that the first row here is what my column headers should be. So I'll go back to the home menu and then just say use first rows as headers. So I think now my manufacturer data is fine for me to make use of. Now I still have some other data points that I want to import to make use of. My sales data, I don't have them here yet, so I have to go and import them. So for me to do this, still at the top, at the home menu, I can see new source. If I expand on this, I can see Excel, I can see CSV, right? So let me try to bring in a data set that is of CSV format. So I'm going to try to do that now. And I can see one of my data sets, sales, right? So once I click on this, it's going to try to import this particular data into Power BI. Right? Just a couple of things to make note to note. If the delimiter for your CSV file is not comma, if it's something else, you can go ahead and change it here while you're trying to import. But for mine, it's a comma delimited file. So I'll just leave this as it is, and then I'll go ahead to import. So while this is showing me the data, right, I have some bit of some things I would want to quickly do on this particular data set as well. For instance, the data type for my revenue column, I would want to change this to fixed decimal. So I just clicked on that. And once this asks me, do I want to replace current values? Yes, I want to replace that. So I'm using fixed decimals for this particular column. And then I also have the zip code, right? So that we don't lose information, for instance, trailing leading zeros in our zip codes, I'll go ahead and change this to text, just like we did earlier. So I'll just accept this, and then you can see that, for instance, this particular record, it's 02895. But earlier it was just 2895, because if I was looking at it as a number, it would eliminate the leading zeros. So that's just one of the important reasons why we should have that, why we should get to convert our zip codes to text. So now this particular sales data that I just imported, right? Now this is data for a particular country, let's say the US, for instance, right? So this is a sales data for the US, but I also have, for my business, I also have subsidiaries that are spread across other countries, and I have the sales data corresponding to these other countries, right? So I'm going to try to import all of those data. So before I import them, let me just quickly show you where that is. So I have that in this PC, local disk, data, and then international sales. You can see I have data for Australia, Canada, Germany, Japan, Mexico, Nigeria. So what I'm going to try to do is to import all of this. Perhaps a question that might be coming to your mind is, do I have to import them one at a time? If you want to import them one at a time, that's fine. But then Power BI also gives you the functionality to import multiple files at the same time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on source, new data source, and then more to see all of the wide range of data sources I can import data from. So this dialog box comes up, and then here you can see, excuse me. Okay, so here you can see folder, right? So I'm going to select folder. Now this is asking me to provide a path to those files that I just showed us earlier, right? So I'll navigate to the same place where I have those files, my C drive, data, international sales. So this is the folder where I have all of that data. So I can go ahead and say okay, and then okay on this as well. Now Power BI would show you, it's looking at that folder path. You can see all of those files that I talked about. They are all CSV files, right? You see some statistics around those files, the last date they were assessed, the last date they were modified or created. Well, I'm just going to go ahead to say combine and transform data, right? So once I click on this, a dialog box is going to come up. And then you can see the same way, like I said, if your delimiter is not comma, you can change this to whatever delimiter you're dealing with, right? So, but in my case, I'm still fine with comma. So I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to go ahead and say okay. But before I say okay, I want you to take a look at these two data sets. So what I have in front here is the sales data from those different countries. What I have behind here is the sales data for USA, for the United States, right? And of course, these are just sample data. So I can, if you look at what they have in common, product ID, date, zip, unit, revenue. But then this has country. My US data does not have country. So just take note. And also, by the time we are done importing this, there's an additional column that is going to be added to that, to this new data set that I am trying to load in now, the international sales data, right? So this is what I'm talking about. So you can see I have country here. I don't have country in my original sales table. I also have source name here, right? So this is just specifying the source where the data is coming from. So I'll just go ahead and also do some data preparation before I, get to make use of this. So like I said, for the zip code, I'm going to change this to text. For the revenue, I'm going to use fixed decimal numbers. And then I don't actually need this source name. So I can go ahead and remove this particular column. So I'll just click on remove column. So that goes away. So now I have product date, product ID, date, zip, units, revenue, and country, right? Now, on the left-hand side of my Power Query, I'll go ahead and click on the sales data. That is the one that's for the US, right? Now, these are both my sales data. One is for the US, the other one is for all other countries. But I want to combine these two data sets, right? So that I can have just a single sales table to work with. So what I can do at this point is to append queries. I can append the query of the international sales data to the sales data, right? So while I'm clicking on the sales data, now at the top, I can go to my home menu. And if you look up here, you'd see merge query, you'd see append queries. I want to append query. So I would click on append query. And then I want to append queries from two tables, right? One is the sales data, the other one is international sales data. So I'm going to select the second table. The first table is the sales data, which I clicked on before clicking on append. Now the second table is my international sales data. So I'll just select that and say, okay. Now look what happens. You can see that in my sales data, I now have a new column called country. Although you can see that it's null because the US data, there was no country there. So you can see null. So if I try to use my filter button, you can see null. But then again, Power BI knows that I have combined two data sets. So you can see a caution sign here saying list may be incomplete, load more. So I'll go ahead and click on load more just to confirm that I can see my other countries. So you can see Power BI is loading all of the country information from sales data. Once it's done with sales data, now it has moved to Australia. Once it's done with Australia, it moves to the next country and the next country and the next country till it gets all of the country data, and I am able to see them right here in the filter. So you can see blank, Australia, Canada, Germany, Japan, Mexico, Nigeria. So I'll just go ahead and say, okay, I'm fine with this now. And I'll just go ahead and just a moment, let me confirm from my notes so that I am sure I am covering all that I need to. Just a moment. Okay, great. Now I want to also look at I'm going to go back to my product data. Now, under my product data, if you look at the category column, right? So you can see for category, quite a number of records seem to be missing. They're not filled in. And that's because I want to be able to use this to show you how to use the fill function in functionality in Power BI, right? So if I go to transform, right? So for all of these, for this particular category column, I can go to transform in my menu option, and then you can see fill. So once I click on fill, I can say fill down. Now, before I click on fill down, let me just scroll a bit. If you look, you'd see I have rural, and then you can see all of the data that falls under rural, and then urban. So I'll just go ahead and use that fill functionality, transform, fill, and then fill down. So the same way we use this functionality in Excel, that's the same way we get to make use of it, right here on Power BI. So you can see it has filled all of that missing data in there, right? Okay, so I think we've done append. Now let's go back to sales data. Just a moment. So now here on our sales data, like I said, this country information, the reason why we're having null here is because from the original sales data for the US, there was no country column. Now we've appended the international sales data to this. So now it's important for us to also capture that country name, USA, for all of the US related data, which is basically where we have null, right? Now I can do this perhaps using a conditional column. I can do this using a conditional column. So for me to do this, I can go to add column, and then I can say conditional column, right? So basically what the conditional column does is it looks out for some set conditions. If those conditions are met, it fills that column with a particular data. Otherwise, it fills it with something else, depending on what you specify. So I'm going to go ahead to say for this, let me call this country. I'll call this, for the time being, I'll call this country 2, because I know there is a column called country at the moment. So I'll call this country 2. And then what I want to be able to say now is whenever my country column is null, then fill in USA. Otherwise, give me the actual country name. So because I know for Canada, for Nigeria, all of these data sets, all of those records have data in the country column, right? So I'm going to just go ahead and use that condition to say if country equals null, then fill in USA. Now, else, I want it to give me the value of country. So I'm saying if country equals null, give me USA, else give me country. So once I say okay on this, now you can see my country 2, it has USA. Well, if we keep going down all the way to the other countries, you would get to see that we now have USA alongside other countries. So let me just try to use that filter function and quickly show this. So I'm trying to use the filter function and I'm saying load more. It's going to load all of the country data from all those different data sets that we combined together, right? So just in a moment, this should be done. Oh, great. So we can see we have some blanks, but then we have Australia, Canada, Germany, Japan, Mexico, Nigeria, USA. So I'll just say okay on this. Now, there's also something I want to be able to do, right? For this, my sales data, I want to filter this in such a way that it would only show me the data for my 3 most recent years, right? Now, this data spans from 2013 to 2020, right? So, but then I want to be able to narrow my view down to 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020, right? So I can go ahead and say date filter. So once I click on this downward arrow sign, I can see an option here called date filter. Once I click on this, it's going to give me a couple of options, right? So for different purposes, you can use these different options, depending on what you're trying to achieve. But like I said, I want to narrow my view. So I want to see my sales data in the previous 3 years or in the previous 5 years. So for this case, I'm going to just say for the previous 4 years, I'm going to use for the previous 4 years. And then I'm just going to say, oh, okay, so for the previous 4 years, so you can see this is in days. I'm going to switch this to years. So in previous 4 years, so I'm going to say, okay. Now my data if I try to scroll down, so you see my data, it's now going to range between 2018, 2019, 2020. So I'm going to just say okay on this. So we've been able to look at all of this. So now we've been able to combine our sales data, right? So the sales data we're going to be making reference to is this one called sales. So it means that I don't entirely need to load this international sales data into my Power BI model. And we're going to be seeing things like that. This is one of the best practices, to apply when you're dealing with your data, so that you don't overload your Power BI data model. So I'm going to just right click on this, and then you'd see enable load. I'm going to uncheck this. So that way, by the time Power BI is loading my data model, it's not going to load the international sales table. It's just going to load product, geography, manufacturer, sales, right? So I'm going to just go ahead and go to home. For me to be able to append all of this, for me to be able to append all of these changes that I have made, right? I'll go ahead and say close and apply. Now, all of this exercise that we've done is just to prepare our data for us to be able to use it to build reports. A lot of the times, the bulk of your time will be spent in making sure that your data is in the best form to be able to utilize it for your reporting purposes. Once you're able to do that, then you would find out that when you're building your report, it becomes a lot easier when you're doing that. So this is just going to take a little bit of time to load. But while this is loading, I'll just quickly check the chat window if I have any questions that I need to respond to, hopefully before this is done. Just a moment. Yes, someone is asking if they can get sample of the data for practice. Yes, I will put that in a zip file, and then I will share with one of our coordinators to make this available to everyone. Yes, I'm going to do that. Just a moment, I'm just trying to make sure that I am looking at the questions. Okay, so I think that's just, that's been the only one that I need to address. So this is just loading my data into, it's creating a Power BI data model, right? And then loading my data into that model. So it's that model, that's what I'm going to be making use of to build my reports. Just a moment. So this is just taking a bit of time. So you'd see one of the things that we did while we were preparing our data, you see that we're dropping some columns that we didn't need, right? And we're also probably going to do some of that also. We're still going to do some of that in the long run, but it's also going to help. You see all this time that my data model took for it to load. It's going to help shorten that time. So the more columns your data has to deal with, the more time it takes to load that into the model. So, but then I think this is done loading. If you look at the right-hand side, you can see the various data sets that was loaded. So you can see my geography data, you can see my manufacturer's data, you can see my product data, and also you can see my sales data, right? Okay, so I think I need to still work on this to take care of this. But before I go into that, I'll just show us some other areas. So on Power BI, on the left-hand side, we're currently on the reports tab. If I switch to the data tab, all of those information that we have in those various tables, we can be able to view them, in here. I can see for geography data, I can see for manufacturer data, product data, all of that information. Now, I might also want to see the relationship between my tables, right? Are there existing relationships between my tables? So the model tab would help me look at the relationships between my tables. Now, you can see that my manufacturer table, there is a manufacturer ID. My product table, there is also a manufacturer ID, hence the relationship between these two. Also, you can see product ID on the product table, and on the sales table, you can also see product ID, hence the relationship. Now, I want to create a relationship between my geography table and my sales table. So I can click on the zip. If you look at the left-hand side, you can see the zip. Field. I can click on that, drag and hold, and then bring it to the sales table where I have zip also. This will create a one-to-many relationship, right? So so this is just giving me a warning that it's trying to create a many-to-many relationship. Now, I don't want a many-to-many relationship. I want a one-to-many relationship. So perhaps I won't be able to use this effectively. This is not going to give me the results that I need. So I need to create something that would help me to achieve that one-to-many relationship, because I know I have just one country in my geography table or one location in my geography table, and then that location could appear multiple times in my sales table. So I'll go ahead and just cancel on this, and we're going to create a new column that we can use for this relationship purpose, right? So, but for me to do that, on the geography, let me go back to the report tab. So on the geography table on the right-hand side, if I click on the three dots here, right, I can see create a new column. So once I click on this, you'd see Power BI opens a formula bar for me, right? So with this formula bar, I can use some of the languages that Power BI understands. For instance, my DAX query, right? So when you get to go deeper into Power BI, you get to hear more about DAX, right? So DAX is basically one of the languages that we use, data analysis expression that we use to interact with Power BI, right? So I'm going to use the DAX expression to create a field, a column that combines my zip and country together, my zip code and country. I'm going to create a DAX expression that combines these together, both on the sales table and on the geography table, right? So I'll quickly just do this for the geography table. I'm going to copy and paste the expression here. Okay, so once I do this, I'm going to just click on the check sign mark here. And then if you look down here, you can see a new column was just formed, right? A new column was just formed, which is my zip country table, my zip country column. That is that column that I want to use for that relationship. Now, I want to repeat the same thing for my sales column, for my sales data as well. But before I do that, perhaps I want to, I would want to delete a particular column, which is the previous country column. So I want to delete this. And then I want to rename that new country column that we created using our conditional column. I want to rename this to country. So I'm going to just rename this from country 2 to country. I should have done this while we were in the Power Query end earlier, but I can also do that from here, no worries. So now I want to create that zip country column here as well. So I can click on the three dots, new column, and then I would also put an expression that I can use to create this zip country column for my sales table. So I'll just put that formula in here and then just say, okay. Now, once I've done this, I can now go back to my model, model tab, and then I will try to join, this time around, I'm not joining with zip, I'm joining with zip country. So I created the zip country in geography table. I also created a zip country in sales table. So I can join with this column from sales, from geography to sales, right? Now you can see this is, if you look at the geography side, you can see a number here, 1. And then on the sales side, you can see asterisks. So basically, this is telling you that it's created a one-to-many relationship as against what Zip was trying to create for us earlier, which was a many-to-many relationship, right? So all of these are just important that we get to know about these relationships for Power BI. So I'm going to just go straight into creating my report now. So I'll go to the report tab. And then the very first report I would want to create, let me expand the visualization tab. So I want to create a report that looks at country by revenue by countries, right? So I can go ahead and select country. So this is what I have here. So, but I can also select revenue from the sales table. Down here, you see revenue. So I can select revenue. So this gives me revenue across, but I want to use a clustered column chart, right? So let me use a clustered column chart. So I'm selecting a clustered column chart. This changes the view, right? So this is what I have for my report. So let me just expand this a bit. So you can see this is revenue by country, right? Now I want to be able to look at as a decision maker or as someone who relies on dashboards to see how my business is performing on a daily basis, maybe a CFO, maybe a CEO, maybe a CMO. I want to be able to utilize Power BI, to have that insight of how my business is performing across different countries. How is it also performing against other competitors, for instance, right? So I can go ahead and use my manufacturer column as a legend, or should I say, to further dissect this revenue by country, right? So I'll just drag manufacturers to my legend box. So you can see this is now represented a little bit differently, right? I'm not sure I like the way this is represented, so I can try out different charts till I see something that works for me, right? So maybe I'll start from the first one. Okay, so maybe this works, but perhaps could it be a vertical oriented chart? So let me try out the second one. So I think this is fine. Of course, you can try out other charts to see what works for you, but then I'll just stick to this. Now, I can also utilize filters, right? So looking at this particular report that I have here, I can filter this report. If you look at what I have here, I have USA, Australia, Japan, Nigeria, Germany, Mexico, Canada, and blank. I might want to just take out blank. So if I go to the filter tab, under country, I can maybe switch to advanced filtering and then say maybe where country is not blank. So once I do this and apply the filter, You can see that I now have just USA, Australia, Japan, Nigeria, Germany, Mexico, Canada. Bank is no longer there, right? So also, let's say I want to be able to see this chart by top manufacturers, the top performing or the top selling manufacturers across these countries, right? I can further use my filter, to do that. So for instance, if I expand the manufacturer filter, I can switch this to top N. My filter type, I can use top N. So I want to see the top 5 manufacturers by revenue. Those manufacturers that made a lot of sales over the years, right? Over the past 3 years that we're considering, I want to see that by revenue. So here, this is saying filter type, top N, show items, top 5 by value. What value do you want to see this top 5 manufacturers by? So I want to see it by revenue. So I can drag revenue, to this value box. And then just let me expand this a little bit. Let me just expand this a little bit. So just take a look. You will see that currently, I've not applied the filter yet. Currently, we have a couple of manufacturers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. And when I click on this apply for that top 5 manufacturers by revenue, if I click on apply, you would see that the chart now becomes streamlined to just this top 5 manufacturers, right? So perhaps I want to be able to, it would be a lot easier if I can use this top manufacturers this insight from these top manufacturers to create a group, or should I say a group? Yeah, it's on Power BI, it's called a group. So that group is like saying, I want to see my reports by top manufacturers, my top competitors. I want to see the report by other categories and my business, this 3 categories. So for the purpose of this reporting, I'm going to assume that this Van Asdel is my business, is the business for which I am building this report for, and every other manufacturer here is the competition, right? So in my manufacturer table, I'm going to go ahead and create what we call a group, right? I'm going to create what we call a group. So I'll just click on my manufacturer data, right click on this, and just a moment. Okay, so I'm going to click on my manufacturer column, and then I want to create a new group. So you can see create a new group. Once I right click on my manufacturer column, I want to create a new group. Now, like I said, I want that group to be my top manufacturers, sorry, my top competitors, my top 5 competitors. I also want my business as another category, and I want every other manufacturers that is not performing as much as this top 5 manufacturers. I want them in these 3 different buckets, right? So who are my top manufacturers? These guys I have on this chart. So I can go ahead and select all of them. So for you to be able to select this, you have to hold control. So I'll hold my control button. I'll click on the first one. Also, the next one is Kuros. The next one is Natura. The next one is Piron. So these guys are the top manufacturers that I am contending with. So I can create them as a group. Once I click on create group, I can name this group as top competitors, right? Once I'm able to do this, now I also want to include every other manufacturer that is not among this top 4, I want to include them into a category called others. So I'm going to include other group. And then I also want to include my business. Like I said, for the purpose of this reporting, this Van Asdel, it's my business or it's my company. So I'm going to click on Van Asdel, and I'm going to create this as a group, right? So once I'm done, you can see the three categories: my top competitors, Van Asdel, and other manufacturers that are not, top performing, like the top 4. So once I'm done with this, I can go ahead and say okay, right? So once I say okay, on the right-hand side, you'd see that under my manufacturer table, a new group has now been created, right? And this is going to help us to, I'm going to show us how this helps us to view our data better. So, but before I do that, I'm going to clear that filter I did here on top 5 manufacturers. So I'm going to clear this. And then also for the legend, you can see here I said top, for the legend, I used manufacturer as legend. I'm going to also click this out. So this is just giving me all my revenue by country. Now I want to use that group that I just created in legend instead. So it's going to break this revenue by country. It's going to break them by those 3 categories, those 3 groups that I just created. So I'm going to just pick the category, the group I created, and put that in legend. So you can see now my chart is now looking at revenue by country, but then it is showing me for orders, for top competitors, and for my business, right? So maybe I want to see the portion of revenue generated by my business as compared to the top competitors, as compared to other manufacturers. So this is just one chart. So I'll quickly just create a couple of other charts to help us with some other bit of insight. For instance, I want to be able to cross filter, right? I want to be able to click on one chart and it can also filter what I have on another chart. So what I can do is I'm clicking outside the box now, outside this particular chart, this report I just created. I'm clicking outside that, and then I'm going to select a tree map, and then for this tree map, I'm going to use my manufacturer names here. So I'm going to select manufacturer, and then I want this to show me manufacturers by revenue. So I'm selecting manufacturers, I'm also selecting revenue. So it gives me this view that tells me the various manufacturers, how they are performing, right? So you can see Van Asdel is the manufacturer with the biggest revenue, and followed by all other manufacturers, right? So then, before we get to cross-filtering, I also want to include another chart that shows me more like a trend of how this revenue has been generated over the years, right? So for me to do that, I can go ahead and, before I do that, I want to create something, another data set called a date dimension table. So I'm going to quickly create a date dimension table, just like we created a couple of other fields. I'm going to create a date dimension table because this would be helpful in this trend analysis. So for me to create this date dimension table, I'm going to go back to just a moment. So table under models. So for my report tab, I switched down to my model tab, sorry, my data tab, right? Now, in the menu options, you'll see different menus: home, help, table tools. Now for table tools, I want to create a new table. I want to create a new table. Now I want to create this table using a formula, right? Now, the formula I'm going to be making use of, I can see, yes, I'll be sharing these DAX expressions that I used for this exercise. I'm going to share this, but then I'm pasting this DAX, this expression here to create a table dimension, a date dimension table for me. This is going to be using a couple of functions, the calendar function, the date function. It's going to create a dimension table for me. Now, I want this dimension table to range from 2012 to perhaps 2022. So I'll just modify this to 2022, and then I say, okay. So once this is done, so you can see here, so this is the date dimension table. Now I want to maybe change this, the data type. I want to change this from date time to just date. So at the top, I can easily just change the data type. I just switch from date time to just date. So I'll go back to my Power BI, my model. I'm going back to my model view. So for the model view, I now have a relationship, a date table. This is my date table. And I know I also have date in my sales table, right? So I can drag the date table from my date dimension table. I can drag the date column from my date dimension table and join it to that of the sales table, right? So it also creates a relationship for me, a one-to-many relationship. So you can see all my tables are now connected. In some cases, not all your tables may be connected. In some cases, all your tables will be connected depending on the type of relationships you build in them. So I'll go back to my reporting tab, and then I want to create another clustered column chart. I want to create a column chart, a clustered column chart. This time around, I want to put in revenue. I know we're pressed for time, so I'm just going to try to do this as quickly as we can. So this chart is looking at revenue, right? So, but then I want to see this revenue over time. So I can also include dates. So, but like we just did, I know we have a date in the sales table, but we also created a date dimension table, right? So I can go ahead and use the one I have in the date dimension table, and just, this is, it's preferable to use the one in the date dimension table. So once I select on that, so you can see the revenue that was generated over a 3 years period, 2018, 2019, 2020, right? So that way, if I want to see the behavior, over a particular year, I can just click on this and I would see how that interacts with this. But then we need to make sure that this interaction, this interactivity between these reports are designed or are built the way they should be. So what I'm going to do is, first off, I'm going to create what we call, okay, so before I do that of interactivity, let's look at what we call drill down functionality. So I'm going to I want to be able to, for each of these years, I want to be able to go into a particular year, see the different quarters in that year and the performance based on those quarters. For any of those quarters, I want to be able to see the months that make up that quarter and see performance based on that quarter. So what I'm going to do is to, on this report, you can see an arrow facing downwards. Once I click on this single arrow facing downwards, it's going to activate drill down functionality. That is all I need to do to activate drill down functionality. Now, if I click on 2020, it takes me into the chart for 2020. I can see data for Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4. Maybe I'm more interested in Q2 because I have the most revenue generated in Q2. I can click on that to see, okay, I have January, April, May, June, and I can see the performance based on that. Maybe I want to go back up to the year level. You can see the drill up function. So I can click on this, it takes me back up. I can click on it again, it takes me to the year level. If I want to also see this granularly for the different quarters by different years, by different months, I can expand this totally. So I can see 2018 Q1, 2018 Q2, just like that. So, but I'll just go back up, and that is how you use the drill functionality. So, like I said, I want to be able to make sure that the interactivity between these three charts are as it should be. For me to do that, I can go to the view option. Sorry, just a moment. Just a moment. Oh, sorry, the format option, right? So once I click on the format menu, the format menu, once I click on the format menu, on the left-hand side, you see something called edit interactions. So what interaction is this talking about? When I click on this, that interaction that this particular chart has with this other chart, that is the interaction I want to edit. So I'll just go ahead and say edit interaction. So I want to edit the interaction. So let me do this again. Before I clicked on edit interaction, I actually clicked on this particular revenue by year. So once I click on revenue by year, I want to edit the interaction that revenue by year has with revenue by manufacturers and revenue by country. So I can go ahead and click on edit interactions, and then you would see some icons that come up on other reports. That is, aside from the report that you're trying to create this interaction for, you see icons that come up on every other report. So for me to be able to create that interactivity, I'll click on the filter icon that appears in other reports. So I'm going to click on filter for revenue by manufacturer. I'll click on filter for revenue by country, right? So let me show you how this now works. So if I click on 2018, you can see this now breaks, it now gives me just the information for 2018. It drills, it filters this other report to information for 2018 alone. If I click on Q1, it further filters the report down to information for Q1 in 2018 alone. So I can just go back up, and then let me just quickly create this interactivity for the other reports. So I can click on the revenue by manufacturer, click on, once I click on revenue by manufacturers, I can click on the filter icon on the other two reports. When I click on revenue by country, I can click on the filter icon on the other two reports. Now, all of my reports are interwoven with respect to interactivity. So if I click on Van Asdel, it filters all of my reports just to the information concerning this particular manufacturer. Let me click on a country. If I click on Australia, for instance, it filters both the revenue by year and the revenue by manufacturers to Australia alone, right? And that's how this interactivity works. So I know we are pressed for time, so I think the last thing I just want to do now is to show us what we call hierarchies, right? Just to show us what we call hierarchies. So I'm going to just minimize this a little bit. I'll just minimize this a little bit. And then if you look at our products, so I have category, I have segment, and I have products, right? So let me say I want to build a report, a chart that shows me revenue by products category. So let's say I want to look at revenue by product category, just where's category, so category. So you see, this gives me a product by category. But then I want to be able to build this report in such a way that I can drill down from category to segment down to product, right? So I can go ahead and right here, you can see where I have my category for this particular chart. You can see where I have my category. If I want to create a hierarchy of category, then segment, I can drag segment and put it underneath category in axis. Now, look at what this does. It enables a drill down functionality now. So for urban, if I click on urban, it will take me into the various segments under urban. So let me go back up. If I click on youth, it will take me into the various segments under youth. And that's basically one way to create a hierarchy. The other way I could have created the hierarchy, I can just click on these three dots. Can click on category, right click, and then I would say create hierarchy, right? So for me to be able to create this hierarchy, I'll just specify the various. So now it's saying it created a category hierarchy for me, right? So which fields do I want to be under this category hierarchy? I want category to be here. I also want segments to be here as well. So if I want to include segments in this hierarchy, I can just click on this option and then just say add to hierarchy, category hierarchy. So it takes this segment and puts it into my category hierarchy. So in place of what I did here earlier, I can take out these two columns that I put here and just put my category hierarchy here in axis instead. So you can see it gives me that same functionality when I drill down, the same functionality as before. It gives me that. So that means I can create my hierarchy in those two ways. So this is basically my report. And so just a moment, I want to collapse these various views. So this is, like I said, this is my report. And I think the last thing I just want to do is to be able to publish this report, right? I want to be able to publish this report. We're going to see more of publishing and sharing reports in our next session. But then I want to just go ahead and quickly publish this report. So up at the top of Power BI, at the top screen, you'd see an option that says publish. If I click on that, it would need me to save this report first before I go ahead to publish. So I can go ahead and save. So I can go ahead and save. So let me just save this with a different name. I'll just save this with a different name, data, DSN Masterclass, updated. And then it just saves that, it saves the report for me, right? So at any point in time, I can open the report and view it. But right now, I want to publish. So for me to be able to publish this report, I have to save the report. And then once I click on publish, now, once I click on publish, Power BI tries to connect me to my Power BI workspace on Power BI service, which is the other component of Power BI that we talked about, where you host your reports. So I can go ahead and publish this to my workspace on Power BI service, provided I am signed into Power BI. So I can go ahead and select this particular workspace, and then it's beginning to publish this report. It's publishing it to with the name DSN Masterclass updated, right? So once this is done, I think that would just be it for our session today. I can take a couple of questions if we have questions. I know we are stretched for time. I'll just look through if there are questions for me to answer, but then I'll just wait for this to finish publishing, maybe because the data, if you remember when we're loading data into a Power BI model, it seemed to be like a lot of data, right? So it's just taking a bit of time. At the same time, that is what is taking to publish this data to Power BI service. But while this is publishing, of course, we can take questions. I'm not sure I get your question when you say what happens to published dashboards, but then when you publish your report to Power BI service, what that means is that you can now collaborate with that report. You can now share that Power BI report with different people. So different people can now access the report from wherever they are. You can access it on different devices, on different platforms, right? So I hope that addresses your question around what happens to published dashboard. I don't know if there are any other questions. So for the DAX queries used, I'm going to put them right now in the chat window. But at the same time, I did mention that I was going to share some resources. So it's going to be contained in the resource that I will be sharing. I would share the data set. I will also share a guide that would walk you through how to create reports, on Power BI, basically using some of the best practices that you can adopt to do that. So for the date dimension table, I am putting that in the chat window now. So I will just put that in the chat window. And then for the zip country column that we created earlier, I'm also going to put that in the chat window. Just a moment. Just a moment. So we created two zip country columns. So zip country, there was one created in the sales table. So this is for, let me just put a comment here. This is for the sales table. Then there is also another one for the geography table. So I am putting that in the chat window. This is for the geography table. Right. So, and if you direct your attention to my screen, you would see that the Power BI report has been published successfully. So if I click on this link, it would open up that particular Power BI report. So it's opening that up on my browser. Voila. So this is my report, the report we just created today. You would see manufacturer by year, manufacturer by category, by, revenue by year, revenue by category, revenue by manufacturer, revenue by country. So all of that, you see that in the dashboard, that's the report that's published on Power BI. So I don't know if there are any other questions, but I think that would be all that we will be taking for today's session. And I'll just hand over back to our moderator for closing this out. Thank you so much for having me. And yeah, I'll just hand over at this point.
Wow, thank you so much, Mr. Emmanuel. This has been a wonderful session. Thank you so much for taking your time. We are really grateful for this opportunity. Ladies and gentlemen, please let's appreciate Mr. Emmanuel in the chat room. Thank you so much, sir. We are really excited to have you around this evening. Okay, so in the next few minutes, I'll be entertaining questions. So if you have any question for our facilitator, quickly drop it in the chat room. I'll be scanning through now to see if we have any question. Okay, yes. So in the absence of no other question, I think we'll just move the engagement to the Google Classroom. So please note that the engagement continues in the Google Classroom. Our facilitator and the DSL team is on standby to always attend to our questions. So if there is anything bothering, just drop your question in the Google Classroom. We'll be ready to attend to your question. And like I said, our awesome facilitator will also be in the Google Classroom to attend to our questions. Thank you so much, Mr. Emmanuel. We are really glad for this session. And thank you once again, everyone, for joining us this evening. So yes, do enjoy the rest of your day. Let's continue the engagement in the Google Classroom. Bye, everyone.